What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 fantasy football platform. It is the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more and sign up, go to all-22.com. Ray, today we're discussing linebackers, dude, and honest to God, this was the hardest by a country mile that we had to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to do our best to put you on the right path and tell you what you need to know for your drafts and how to approach the linebacker position. But linebackers are under attack. It's rough. It's rough out there. It is not consistent year to year. It's not consistent week to week with just the nature of how the NFL offenses have evolved and how they attack defenses. Linebackers are the biggest victims of this new age NFL and the current way things are done by opposing offenses. So even great players are going to have some bad grading at times. So you're really navigating a minefield here with like one hand tied behind your back. I don't even know if that matters in a minefield, but like also blindfolded and with like loud sirens in the background or something, so you really have just no sense of direction. It's rough, but we're going to do our best. We're going to get you right. We're going to get you right.
I'm going to say something kind of controversial, Ray. Is this the only position group in the NFL that there may not be a Hall of Famer in tier one? There are Hall of Famers playing football right now at the linebacker position, but they're all like 35 years old.
There's still going to be one. Let's get through it and we'll see. But I think there should be one. There should be one that I have in mind. I
don't know. All right, you want me to just jump in tier one?
Yeah, let's jump into it. Yeah, training camps have started, everybody, for a handful of teams. It's great. It's fun. Third week of July. Hall of Fame games in like 2 weeks or something. We're having a great time. Let's jump into linebacker.
Wait, no. Don't jump into linebacker. Let's talk about that. The Hall of Fame game's coming up, but we are actually going to be at that field pretty soon. I don't know if anybody listening will be at the Fantasy Football Expo, but we will be there. Bob Lung always puts on a great show. We're going to be playing flag football. We actually need people to come play with us. So if you're interested, hit us up.
That makes it sound like we didn't cook former Pro Bowl players last year, but it's just that it's a logistical
off of the bench. Yeah. And we still beat Des Bryant. Just putting it out there.
I wasn't going to name names.
I named names. Ray, be humble.
Just don't make it sound like it's like we can't get people to play with us. It's a logistical issue that happened with our team, and now we're shorthanded.
That is true.
You made us sound really weak there for a second. I had to be like, no. Let's be real for a second here.
Half of our team is no longer going to the Expo because of a move, and we're now a little shorthanded, so we could use some bodies. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, if anybody is interested in going to the Expo, we will be there. We'll have a booth. We're going to be giving out some cool stuff too. So if you like free stuff, come see our table. All right. So tier one at the linebacker position was an absolute nightmare for me. I don't even know if I agree with half of the names on this part of the list. I don't think you will either. But my tier one is Fred Warner from the 49ers, 27 years old, 90.1 grade last year. I don't think there's any controversy there. Nick Bolton on the Chiefs, 24 years old, had a 69.2 last year. I'm coming out with number 2 on my list. Dude had a 69.2 last year at the linebacker position, just to give you an idea of the state of linebacker. TJ Edwards for the Bears, 27 years old, 80.2 grade last year. Roquan Smith on the Ravens, 27 years old, 79.2. Ivan Pace Jr. with Minnesota, 23 years old, 77.2 in his rookie year. Leo Chanel, 25 years old, 76.5 for the Chiefs. Gets real sketchy real quick. Ernest Jones, 24-year-old with the Rams, had an 82.1 last year after a very promising rookie season. Devin Lloyd rebounding with the Jags, 25 years old, 78.1. And then my boy Jack Campbell with Detroit, 23 years old, 57.3 grade. Sketchy group of names. Ray,
is that the whole tier one?
I don't know. I had it as tier one, dude. This could be tier 1, 2, and 3 for all I know.
I think Fred Warner has his own tier. I think it's just the Fred Warner tier, and then tier one, if you want to call it that. So there's Fred Warner, and then there's tier one. Fred Warner, what else is there to really say, right? He's on 49ers, great situation, in part because of how awesome he is and how incredible he is at just everything that it takes to be a great linebacker in the league today. Nothing there has really changed, or you can point to something that says that he's in line for a step back. Yes, he lost kind of his running mate there to injury in the Super Bowl, but Fred Warner himself just does what he does, sort of regardless of what's around him. So I think that's the clear number one. After that, it's a bit of a soup. Yes, you have guys like TJ Edwards and such. I don't think there's any names to take out of that next group. It's more so which ones do you think maybe can take a step back, maybe can have, maybe are poised to continue the ascent that sort of took place heading into last year. Like, for example, Devin Lloyd just feels like the Jags are kind of on the right track overall. As a team now, they're kind of finding their footing. So it seems, right? And so it feels. And, he was a high draft pick player, steadily improved and increased year over year. So I think that's something that we can kind of point to as feeling somewhat certain heading into next year as to how well he will perform. But then there's guys that, it's like, hey, are they really going to play as well as we think? I mean, Ivan Pace Jr., like, yeah, he was great as a rookie and you like it. It was a great story and all, but 6 months from now, we could be looking back at this and saying, yeah, it was 1 year from a rookie undrafted player. Like, why did we feel so certain that he was just going to sort of continue playing so great? It's possible. He's not the prototype or anything like that. I mean, it's just one of those deals where there is an obvious factor that you could point to if things go wrong and say, here's why we missed it. Ivan Pace might be that guy. Although I like him, I think he's good at football. That's something to point to. Jack Campbell could just not take a next step, right? We think he can because of his draft capital, his style of play. The bigger linebackers tend to be a bit more steady in grade wise, but he's coming off a 57 graded year, and yes, the line got better in front of him, so there's room for hope. But what if he's just, what if an improvement for him is 65? What was that, linebacker 6 for you? I mean, it's tough to navigate, and that's the minefield. But I think I feel best after Fred Warner about Roquan Smith, and then maybe everybody else. That's a long way of saying Roquan Smith is number 2.
So, I mean, again, going back to what I said earlier, people are going to be like, you're an absolute hater on Fred Warner to say he's not a Hall of Famer. But I'm going to be honest, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's a really, really, really good football player. But he hasn't done it for an eternity. He's been good for a few years. He is, a violent hitter with insane speed and coverage ability, which I love, which is exactly what today's NFL is all about. Maybe I'm just, reminiscing too much of my youth when Brian Urlacher and, Ray Lewis and those guys just caused a different style of havoc on the football field, right? Like, it was just different. Linebackers were feared differently. I don't know. It's just, I don't love it. I don't love it. But Fred Warner, great football player. I agree with you. He's number 1. And yeah, I think Roquan Smith is the only other guy that I feel really confident saying, I think year over year, now that he's a Raven, it's going to be good. Even if it's not fantastic and it's not 90 grading, I think it's as good as we're going to see. And the one you have the most confidence in being consistently good. So let's go ahead and make him number 2. So you were talking about a few guys. I'm just going to recap. So like Devin Lloyd, we talked about Eric Armstead going there. That defensive line should be getting better, right? With some of those young guys starting to develop. Josh Allen has really developed into a great player. So they're going to get, rushing off the edge. They strengthened their interior. They've continued to draft guys in the interior. And Devin Lloyd has taken incremental steps up, and now the situation gets better. So I like Devin Lloyd a lot too. I think he could be in that linebacker 3 conversation. Jack Campbell, I know you said, if he gets a 65 next year, is that much better? He's still 23 years old. He's going to be playing part of this season at 23 years old. I don't think linebacker is a position where you're just good. And what's funny too about a lot of the older players that are grading through the roof still, right? Like 35-year-old Demario Davis and CJ Mosley and Bobby Wagner. These guys are still grading incredibly well, but their roles are just so diminished where in the pass game, maybe besides Demario Davis, these guys aren't asked to do all that much, right? I think Jack Campbell, being the young rookie in Detroit, got exposed at times in the pass game last year, right? So it's like, could they simplify it for him a little bit? Can they give him a more defined role on specific downs? I think so. And again, it's not about you. This is you. I feel like I'm talking, regurgitating things you say, but it's not about next year, right? It's about 2, 3, 4 years down the road for the linebacker position. That's why I still believe in Campbell and included him in this part of the list for me. TJ Edwards like doesn't do anything for me, honestly. Like I think he's a really good football player. I don't get excited at all about him. I don't think his game is all that exciting. And we talked about how the Bears basically did nothing this offseason on that side of the football field, right? They maintained. Ivan Pace, I don't know. You're right. Like, I have no idea if he's going to maintain. I also think about the coaching situation there, right? Great defensive coordinator that was a head coach and is likely to be a head coach again, right? So is this situation temporary because of the defensive coordinator that they have there? I don't know. Then you look at guys like Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal on the Chiefs. I think both of them are great football players. I like Nick Bolton. I think of the two, by far, it's Nick Bolton for me. And Nick Bolton, to me, is in the argument for the next guy on this list at number 3, because he has a lot of the intangibles that Fred Warner has, and he plays just a relentless style of football. He's a hard hitter. He's all over the field, and you can tell the Chiefs trust him to do those things, right? They put him in difficult situations, and he's been successful. So I think it's a conversation between Devin Lloyd and Nick Bolton at the next spot. I don't think you could go too wrong either way.
I think Bolton's a little safer. I also loved Bolton coming out of the draft too. So I think Bolton's a safe pick here. I think he's a good player in a good situation. Good team, overlooked at times, but I think I'd put Nick Bolton 3rd and then Devin Lloyd 4th.
Okay. I'm in agreement there.
And so, I know you kind of poo-pooed him a bit, but oh man, TJ Edwards been pretty good the last 3 years. I think he might slide in there at 5 because linebacker, you want some consistency, and it's if nothing else, he's pretty consistent if he's not outstanding.
He has been extremely consistent. I don't think he's been outstanding, but he has been extremely consistent, especially because of when you think about the strategy that the Bears implemented a few years ago, right? They let Roquan Smith leave, and instead they invested the same amount of money in 2 players, one being TJ Edwards, the other being Tremaine Edmonds, I think, one of the Edmonds brothers. And Edmonds has been awful, just totally terrible. But thank God Edwards has been as good as he's been, because he actually has been grading better than Roquan Smith. I just like Roquan Smith better. I trust him better. I trust the Ravens defense more. But you're right. TJ Edwards has been great. I think there's very good argument for him to be number 5 on this list. I just think, when you're talking about 27, 28, 29, TJ Edwards probably does have that 3-year window, so maybe it's fine. But there are some really good players on this list. Like, again, I don't know, but Ernest Jones, Leo Chenal, Ivan Pace, Jack Campbell, where you're thinking you have maybe 8 years, right? And again, you can't really play that game. So maybe it's TJ Edwards.
Yeah, I need to see Campbell do it first, as opposed to just be.
You're going to see him do it, buddy. You're going to see him do it.
I guess.
Don't you worry.
But until he does it, I think I got to put Edwards first.
Okay, so Edwards we're gonna put in at 5. So then there is a whole tier 2 full of guys in that same breath, grading in the same way as TJ Edwards, right? Guys that are maybe 27, 28, 29, that are in that 80, high 70, low 80 grading soup. Do we want to consider some of those guys before we talk about Ivan Pace, Leo Chenal, or Ernest Jones, and Jack Campbell?
Maybe not before Leo Chenal, because we've looked at this, and I mean, he's done it since he came into the league. I mean, in 2022, he was fine too, and then last year had a big year. And in looking at linebackers and trying to decipher as best we could how best to project their performance moving forward, those kind of big, sturdy, 250-pound guys, even though they're not in vogue in the league today, and most people are getting lighter, a 6'3", 250-pound linebacker is going to be asked to do what only a 6'3", 250-pound linebacker can do in a defense. And so if they do that well, they have a consistent role. And as long as they're doing that role well, they're going to grade well. And that's Leo Chenal to a T. That sturdy, big linebacker lends itself to some consistency. at a position where just naturally is just consistency is no longer can be reasonably expected from those guys anymore. He brings that to the table. And at only 23 years old still, I would have Leo Chenal here too. So kudos to the Chiefs for their linebackers, but I would have Chenal here up next before we talk about the other names.
Okay. Chenal at 6. I agree with you. Chenal's my guy. And I talk about that, right? Like I always say that. That's why I like Jack Campbell so much too. He hasn't done it yet, but it's that young, big bodied linebacker where the team is smart enough to know how to use him. I think that's important. Also, I think one big differentiator with Chenal and Campbell is you're playing behind Chris Jones. Like you talk about a defensive interior that'll keep hands off of you and keep linebackers clean. Chris Jones is as good as anybody at that. Campbell, the situation does get better, right? They added to the defensive interior group. So I actually have high hopes for Campbell and to see that improvement because they did get a little bit better on that interior. Okay, but we're going to stop at 6 and I'm going to read some of the tier 2 and we can figure out how we want to do this. But tier 2 for me in no particular order is a big group again. Sorry in advance, but Quincy Williams on the Jets, 27 years old, 81.1 grade last year. Jelani Tavai on the Pats, 27.
Chris pronunciations, baby.
Yep. You look forward to it every time, people. 27-year-old on the Patriots, 86.5. Bobby Okereke on the Giants, 28 years old, 78.2. Frankie Louvu on now with Washington, 27 years old, 78.5. Oh, I'm going to struggle with this name. Foyeside Owusu-Koramoah on the Jags, 29 years old, 75.2. Zaven Collins on Arizona, 25 years old, 72.1. Caden Ellis on Atlanta, 29 years old, 75. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on Cleveland, 24 years old, 75. Jamin Sherwood on the Jets, 24 years old, 76. David Long on Miami, 27 years old, 68.8. Drake Greenlaw, 49ers, we talked about earlier, 27 years old, 69.3 grade. And then Blake Cashman on Houston, 28-year-old, 83.7. A lot of names.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to do that is just sort of find reasons for why not. And so some of those latter names there, Blake Cashman was not good until this past season, and he's now 28 years old. Have to see him do it again, so I'm putting him very much close to the bottom of this tier, if not the next. Dre Greenlaw, great player, unfortunate injury, but once you suffer that injury, and I see you blow out your Achilles, I move you to the bottom. I'm sorry. Show me the Pro Bowlers who have torn their Achilles tendon in the past, and maybe you can change my mind, but you can't. So he's out. David Long, Miami, whole situation went to crap. Lost Wilkins, had devastating injuries to both pass rushers from last year. They bring in a rookie, Chop Robinson. Secondary is still kind of holding up okay with Holland and Ramsey and such. But outside of that, some pieces are getting kind of old out there in Miami. I think the best days of that defense are behind them. And as such, when a defense gets picked on, the linebackers are usually the victim of that just by nature of a weaker front in front of them, along with plays being given up on the back end. So I think those names just kind of float to the bottom. From there are guys that I like Owusu-Koramoah. He still has that kind of injury history, but that defense figures to be good this upcoming season. He's had 3 years of solid grading, so I'd have him near the top of this list overall. Athletic, more so type of coverage backer, but also provides some pass rush as well, in addition to being a top 25 graded cover guy. And I know that is a variable sort of factor in linebacker performance from year to year, but I think he's shown year over year that he's got the chops to do it consistently, whereas some other linebackers in this league don't. And I think that's why I have Owusu-Koramoah pretty high up on this list as well. I think the conversation starts there if you're going from top to bottom with Koramoah. There's also some names on that list that it's just kind of still the same show me thing, right? Zaven Collins, very up and down his first couple of years. I may need to see it just one more time, but I am kind of hopeful, and maybe I'm not giving him enough credit for how good a year he had last year as a top 5 cover graded linebacker. And again, that was sort of his, athleticism was his MO. He really improved in his run defense, which is what sort of buoyed him into the top, top linebackers overall in the league. But again, I don't know. I might want to see him do it one more time. So it's a lot of uncertainty. I think Owusu-Koramoah provides some stability, and maybe Frankie Louvu does as well. But I think those are probably the 2 steady names before going to everybody else.
I think, I was going to recommend Louvu. I think Okereke is getting a little bit too old to be in that top tier where I'm not sure the 3 years is so guaranteed. Also, like, giant situation, new defensive coordinator. We don't necessarily know how it's going to translate, but he is somebody that I just trust on the football field. Last episode I talked about how the Patriots, I just have no faith in them, and it's also new coaching staff, new defensive coaches. So, going from Bill Belichick, I don't know how those Pats linebackers will translate. So I'm going to leave some of them off the list. There was 2 Jets linebackers on here. I think both of them are overvalued right now because they're just kept so clean because of how good the Jets defensive front is. Not that they are these top players themselves. So I agree. Before we move on to that, moving just those 2 guys into that group of the next conversation, there were a bunch of young linebackers that we just haven't seen anything from, but I'm curious if any of them need to be in this conversation, right? So Edgerrin Cooper on the Packers was the first linebacker picked this year. Junior Collison was the second to the Chargers. There's a bunch of guys that, again, rookie linebackers this year. Peyton Wilson, we all loved him, went to Pittsburgh. Cedric Gray went to Tennessee. Guys like that. Then, Drew Sanders last year, I think he was dealing with some injury, graded really poorly, but I know you really liked him. He's on Denver. Henley with the Chargers, very limited play, but when he did play, they used him the right way. He played well. Trenton Simpson in Baltimore played extremely well, but again, very limited usage in Baltimore. And then Overshawn, we saw nothing, right? He was out the entire year for Dallas, but he was one of my favorites, right? From a film perspective. I don't know if I can just lump any of those guys in past some of these vets that have graded really well, but I'm almost tempted to maybe have a couple of them enter this conversation. I think Henley, Simpson, Overshawn, and Cooper all maybe could be.
I think Henley and Cooper are my guys. Overshawn would be. They have really high hopes for Overshawn coming up this year, but I'm always leery of that first year back from an ACL, no matter how, it was in preseason and it was a clean tear. It's still an ACL. It's still an ACL guy. And it takes time. Edgerrin Cooper, just the straight up explosiveness that he brings to the table, that is just, you either have it or you don't. It's just so natural that I'm a big fan. I like the landing spot. Now, is he a top, I don't even know what number we're on, like 8 linebacker for 2024? No, but he has the possibility of standing out among the crowd, and he's only 22 years old for a long time. And I think that's why, if I'm on the clock, I'm probably taking him ahead of a lot of names here.
I would make an argument that Simpson needs to be in that as well. He's starting next to Roquan Smith. They re-signed Matabike. Michael Pierce is there. Odafe Owe stepped up in a big way, like added Nate Wiggins to get their defensive back group under control a little bit. That defense could actually be getting better. And Trenton Simpson was one of those prospects that the explosiveness, the gameplay, the game speed was all excellent. He has a lot of great traits, and it's just it might be a great match, right? Like I honestly, I would push for him to be in there as well. So if I'm going to get a little control here, Henley, Simpson, and Cooper with Owusu-Koramoah, Frankie Louvu to enter the conversation with Jack Campbell, Ernest Jones, Ivan Pace Jr. I think that's our next group.
I think we have to put Koramoah and Louvu first. They're still, roughly 27 years old ish.
Injuries though, dude, with Koramoah, the injuries have just been every season. It's not a joke, right? Like, he's missed a lot of time. He's a smaller linebacker. He's asked to do a lot. We talk about how, that doesn't always work out all that well. I worry about just like saying he's the guy.
I can't quit him. it's the uniqueness to his game. You can't find another player who does what he does, or you can't find many other players who do what he does as good as he does it. And that's my thing.
That's fair. He's 24 years old still. Okay, so he's going to be 7. Frankie Louvu going to Washington is it's a little concerning because he just finally had his like breakout season. He goes to Washington. That Washington defense, we talked about how that defensive interior group is incredible, but guys are on like last years of their deal. They drafted another one. They don't have any edge rushers at all. They don't have one. So it's kind of like I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's a really good defensive minded head coach. So I think we do give him the benefit of the doubt and maybe put him 8.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He's got the consistent grading the last couple of years. It's a defensive minded head coach, and the linemen are still there, right? The ones that truly or that mostly impact his play on the interior there. They're fine, and Dante Fowler will just have to step up on the edge, and so will Dorrance Armstrong. But that's why they got paid.
All right, we'll see. Okay, who's next for you?
Man, I would go Cooper. If I'm on the clock and those names are gone, I'm not taking any of these other names we discussed over Edgerrin Cooper, because I look at Ivan Pace and I'm like, you're young and you performed really well, but you don't have any draft capital. You're not a prototype guy. Like, if you do it again, I think you have a really big rise up the rankings here. But that's just kind of the way of the NFL, right? If you have less capital invested in you as a player, sometimes you have to either show more or show it for longer than someone else who does. And that's just kind of where I fall with Ivan Pace.
I think there's a little bit of a trap there because I do expect him to be successful this year. Same defensive coach that should be a head coach in the league right now. But I don't know if he'll be there the year after, right? So it's like, if he performs well again, is that really what we need to see? Or do we need to see him do it without that defensive coach? I struggle with that. Ernest Jones, that defense, they added a bunch of bodies to that team, right? So like that group got diverse, but they lost Aaron Donald. So it's like, I don't know. I really don't know, right? Jack Campbell or Edgerrin Cooper, I think would be where I'm at. We did the poll. We asked the people who they would pick. Everybody was pretty split. It was pretty split basically down the middle, but Cooper did get the edge. So maybe we just use that as the decider.
No pun. Yeah, we'll use that as a decider.
No pun. I'm not that
I could tell you didn't plan that.
Not even a little. 9, 10. Jack Campbell is linebacker 10. I think this is where you have to go Pace. And then I think it's Henley.
I agree. I like Deion Henley though, but yeah, I agree. It's Pace over Henley.
You can't deny the production, right? Like, it was insane production. It was there. He did it. We haven't seen it from the other guys. So that's 11 and 12. And then it's between, in my mind, it's between Simpson and Jones. Again, we've seen it with Jones. They're about a year apart in age, but man, that situation in Baltimore for a linebacker just seems too easy.
Yeah, I mean, look, losing Aaron Donald is a big deal. It's not it's a phenomenon. You see it. Anybody who lines up next to him, their grade goes through the roof their grades are outliers compared to the rest of their careers when you take a look at it. He has that type of effect on the entire defensive front. So I'm playing a game of situation here, but I want Simpson to take on a bigger role before I place him above that. So I think I would go Jones.
All right. Ernest Jones.
A Loki doke there.
13. Yeah, that was something. All right.
Yeah, I need a bigger role from Simpson, but
I agree.
I agree.
Let's go 13 and 14 there with Jones getting the nod above Simpson. But like the funny part is like, because that's how bad the linebacker situation is in the NFL, that like there are guys that haven't played a snap of football making our top 10 and 15. Like that's kind of crazy. You don't really see that for guys that also weren't first round draft picks. Like these guys were second and third round draft picks. It's a little troubling, but we'll survive. The next group, now we are firmly in tier 2. You had moved guys down that list. That means that
I think we're in tier 3 now.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
just
whoever didn't
fine
make it,
then.
I think we'd just call it tier 3.
We're
It's
gonna make
really
it.
tier 3A because we had Fred Warner, right? In his own
Just
tier.
stop. Just stop. I didn't say that. You said that. I
Okay,
said he's not a Hall of
stand by
Famer.
it. That's ridiculous.
Quincy Williams, Jelani
Tavai,
Tavai, Jelani Tavai, Bobby Okereke, Foyeside. You're gonna say his last name.
Luwakan, yep.
Owusu-Koramoah, Zaven Collins, Caden Ellis, and Jamin Sherwood. I'm going to go Okereke here because the production is there, consistency's there. They've invested in him. I just know what I'm getting with Okereke.
Okay, I don't really have an issue with that. I'm fine with that.
Okay,
That works for
15.
me.
Who's 16 for you? By the way, if I can't pronounce their name, there's a good chance I'm just not going to say them. So unless you recommend them to be next, they're going to fall to like 30.
Okay. I mean, you already said Oluwakan though, right? So I'm not going to put him next year because I'm going to wait. You're going to have to put him on the board since you already said his name. You didn't mention him in this grouping here, but to me, I mean, Zaven Collins is kind of intriguing. He's kind of intriguing. He's been up and down, but if you like the new coordinator in New York, they can get him right. They have a good front. Why not? Why not Zaven Collins?
There's no reason why not. And
I mean, there are reasons why not. It's that he's up and down, but
it's been a good trajectory. It's on the way up. The thing is like the people there didn't draft him, which is always the major concern. But the situation is getting better. They invested a first-round pick in an edge rusher. I think next year's draft is going to be almost completely defense. I really do, right? Like the offense, they've spent a ton on draft picks there. It seems like the past 5 years, it's been 3 receivers in the top 4 rounds for the Cardinals. They should be set at receiver for a while, you'd hope, with Marvin Harrison getting there. So it should be defense, and the defensive group should get better. So I like Zaven Collins. I don't know if he would necessarily be my pick for next on the list, but he's definitely in the conversation.
I'm just looking for someone with a trait that stands out. You can, because it comes to a certain point where it's like, okay, everybody's got flaws here. Everybody's got something missing, right? So what can I point to that says that's why this player is going to be good? This is why he's going to stand out. With Zaven Collins, everything about him physically is unique. So I think that was my tiebreaker. But who are you going to throw in the mix there instead?
Well, Quincy Williams, it's the trait is maybe not right. Exactly. It's just the situation, right? Like nobody should be able to get a hand on him. And if they do, it's a one-on-one matchup every single time because the group is so good in front of him. But it's really one good year of production. So it's again, it's a little back and forth. He's 2 years older than Collins. So if that's the decider, fine. But I think those are the next two.
Well, here's the thing. You mentioned a trap, right? To where someone might lose a defensive coordinator. That's an ideal fit for them, right? We talked about like the Gus Bradley slot corners before and how he's so friendly to those guys and how they grade so well in his system. I mean, 12 months from now, the Jets could look a whole lot different everywhere on offense and defense. And the whole thing is just, that's it. It's done. This is their window and it might be closed in 12 months.
I don't think so. They've invested so much on that defense in draft picks and signing young players that from a defensive interior perspective, like their front seven shouldn't change at all.
Yeah. There should be if Aaron Rodgers goes to retire in like a permanent darkness retreat somewhere, like, is it going to matter? They have like the next Zach Wilson in there who just they can't move the ball, and that defense is just out there just running uphill the entire game and just getting eventually worn down. And that's my concern. It's not Quincy. It's not the rest of the defensive personnel. We saw their offense be so bad that nobody on defense was able to reach their potential. It was so bad that the other side of the ball just couldn't do what they do.
Does it make you feel better he graded 81.1 in that situation that was bad, right?
No.
Okay.
He had younger legs back then.
Okay.
His legs will be 3 years older the next time this happens.
Right.
And that's scary. It does make me feel a little bit better. It does. That's a tiebreaker. It's fine. I'll put him next.
Okay. So he's going to go to
But
16.
I am still worried. Like it's one of those deals where if he has another good season, I might look to ship him out and try to sell high on that.
Sell all your linebackers. Sell all of them. Sell every single linebacker because last episode Ray said, I think we were talking about Who was it? Who was it? Who was it? Who
That I
was it?
said to sell, to trade?
No, that you would take with the last pick in the 53rd round. You would take. He's now
This
with
is great
Miami.
podcasting.
He's now with Miami.
He's not
Calais
Jerome Baker.
Campbell.
Calais Campbell?
Calais
Oh, yeah,
Campbell.
yeah.
You were like, I'm going to take him in the 53rd round. There were like 5 linebackers you can do that with. So sell all of your linebackers, draft the 53rd round linebacker that's good and old, and then just draft a couple of
Mario Davis, baby.
And hope that one of them's Ivan Pace Jr. That's the strategy.
Might not be a bad strategy. Really might not.
It's not. I'm telling you it's not. Okay. I'm going with, well, Zaven Collins is 17. Mm-hmm. And then we need to figure out who's 18.
Man. So here's where it gets rough. I don't even remember the names that were on the board at this point. Your boy, Owusu-Koramoah. Sell me why not Owusu-Koramoah. I'm trying to get you to not have to say his name for the rest of this episode. If you could sell me on why he needs to go here.
29 years old. Well, no, I'm worried. The reason I'm not putting him forward is 29 years old, hasn't seen an elite season yet. Not even like very good, right? It's been average. He's had average play. And every year we talk about him as that next guy that's going to step up and be good, but he's now 29 years old. The team's gotten better around him. Other guys are showing potential. He hasn't been one of those guys. He's just been average, right? So is there a limit to how good he can be? Maybe, right? 75.2 being like one of his highest graded years, if not the highest, at 29 years old, doesn't make me feel confident making him linebacker 18. Saying that, like when I watch the film, I see a really good football player, right? Like I see the traits that are needed to be a top linebacker in the NFL, and 18 would be fine to put him there. Just the consistent play isn't really there. So I struggle with it. Pat's guy that I keep saying his name wrong, so I'm not going to name him.
Jelani Tavai, good staff there, yeah.
Probably should be the next guy on the list, considering he had an 86.5 grade last year at 27 years old, or at 26 years old. Now he's going to be 27.
Yeah, the thing with Tavai, I think you have to get the bad taste out of your mouth from 2020 and 2021. He was really bad. Really bad. In the last 2 years, he's been legitimately a good football player, and I still like the defensive staff there in New England. And the way I view a lot of those New England players, they're essentially getting back in it. And you could say I'm putting the cart before the horse. I don't care. They're getting an elite cornerback in Christian Gonzalez that they missed for basically the whole year last year. So they're adding an elite corner to their defense that already performed pretty well, and Jelani Tavai performed very well. How much that impacts him individually, probably not too much. But with locking up Barmore and such, I like him here. The whole turnover in New England doesn't bother me as much when it comes to the defensive side of the ball and guys like Jelani Tavai. So I'm okay with that.
Let's put Tavai and Owusu-Koramoah next, so I never have to say their names again. 18 and 19.
Very self-serving podcast.
I will also say I think we've gone a little too far, and I think Overshown needs to be the next guy. Or Drew Sanders. Like, I think those guys.
Achilles, he's out. I'm putting him.
Sanders?
Yep, he's done. I had to, F in the chat. He's gone.
Okay. Overshown, Junior Colson. If there was any other linebackers, you're like Peyton Wilson. I know the injuries are serious with him too, but I think I want to start investing in some of the young guys over some of the names we have left.
So you mentioned, those are the young guys. I think that's the next batch of young players. How do you reconcile that with a very old Demario Davis?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think these are the next guys. I think maybe the next 2 or 3 young guys on the list you invest in over Demario Davis, because it's literally 10 years versus maybe a year, right? And I think that's smart to do, but I would definitely take a Davis, a Mosley, a Wagner, even a Levante David over the next group of guys, right? So I think you're right. Those guys need to be in the conversation too. But actually, before we even do that, there was a name that stuck out to me, Marquise Bell. I wanted to ask you as a Dallas fan what you thought of him. Graded out 79.9 last year. He's 25 years old. He wasn't even on my radar. So Curious what you think of him.
Yeah, I scooped him up in all 22 because that's what I do. But the concern with Marquise Bell is he's 6'2", he's like 215 pounds. And yes, it's a new age linebacker, it's 2024, et cetera, et cetera. He's basically a linebacker, or was basically a linebacker playing safety, or sorry, a safety playing linebacker under Dan Quinn's defense last year. And he graded very well because he was kind of running around like an athlete out there. But Mike Zimmer, defensive coordinator, comes in. That style of play is much different than what it was last year. Whereas everything under Dan Quinn was kind of attack, just kind of run around the field. Zimmer is much more sound, stay true to your principles on defense, half and half, too deep coverage at safety. And he likes his linebackers to be more in the traditional sense of like, that's why they brought in Eric Kendricks, a more traditional Mike linebacker. They drafted Maris Luafau, who they're also very high on out there. They seem to like him a lot as the rookie from Notre Dame, who has more size to him. So the issue with Marquise Bell is we're not sure what his role is going to be under Mike Zimmer. He's not a Zimmer guy. He doesn't have a fit at linebacker with what Zimmer likes to do. But then at safety, does he really fit there if he's more of like the big kind of hybrid linebacker type of player? So this could be a situation where this guy is just a darn good football player. Even if he's playing like a big nickel linebacker spot, he's going to earn enough snaps and play well enough to continue his high grading and to be a value for you in all 22. But it's not a given. There's uncertainty there. And that's what's really kept him down the ranks. Otherwise, I would have been advocating for this guy at around like 10 because he did have a darn good year last year. But Quinn was basically the perfect fit for him. And it's a complete 180 under Zimmer, and we're not sure how that's going to shake out.
Okay. And there were a couple other names I'll just throw out there to make sure. I don't have these guys. They were in my tier 5, so down the list. But Patrick Queen, right, goes from the Ravens to Pittsburgh. Lining up next to Roquan Smith seemed to be his cure-all, right? But now he's going to Pittsburgh. We don't know what that's going to look like. He's going to be competing with other guys. Also, Peyton Wilson's going to be there. I don't know, again, what that linebacker situation is going to look like. Mac Wilson had a great year last year, I think, with the Patriots. Now he's with Arizona, 26 years old, 80.8 grade last year. And then there's a few other guys, but I think those are really the names that I could see somebody out there arguing to be included in this conversation, that being Patrick Queen, Mac Wilson, to go into the conversation with Drake Greenlaw, Blake Cashman, Overshawn, Junior Colson. You want to throw Marist out there, and then the older guys, Davis, Mosley, Wagner, and Levante David.
None of them make me want to move off the upside for the young guys, just to be flat out honest. I feel like if it didn't take so long for Cashman to kind of reach this level of play, then he could be up there. But this isn't an instance of taking a couple of years to figure it out. He's been in the league since 2019, and last year was his first year. And even then it was not a limited role, but it wasn't a full-time, it wasn't a 50 snaps per game role week in and week out. It was, around 30-ish, give or take. He has a high stop rate. The metrics are there. I just can't pull the trigger on Blake Cashman just yet. I just can't. And maybe it's the whole Cashman thing, Yankee fan, PTSD. That could be it too. But he legitimately had just one good year.
He's also going from Houston, which turned out to be an amazing situation, to Minnesota. Minnesota being what seems to be a good situation for right now. But again, we don't know what that's going to look like in the future. So I agree with you. Let's hold off on him. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm going to say I think it's Overshawn. I think he's the next guy for me. I could see an argument for Colson with the Chargers. Again, the Chargers are going to have this really young linebacker core with Henley and Colson. Could be a lot of fun. Could also be terrible. I don't know. But that coach, the new coach, makes me excited, makes me want to invest.
I think they still need some time, though, to really fix that run defense. I don't think they're there quite yet, though. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. I would probably put Overshown there above them as well. I'm trying to find a reason to not put Overshown here. I'm trying to find someone to move me off him, and I just can't. It's got to be Overshown. They're really high on him. He looked really good in some preseason action, albeit limited, but in training camp as well. He was having a heck of a camp. Got more size. Again, yes, new defensive coordinator, like we mentioned with Marquise Bell, but he's got a bit more size to him. Still very athletic. I think he's got a more defined role than Marquise Bell does. I think you put him here. And I'm not sure how long I wait to put Marquise Bell here either, despite all the other uncertainty, but I think for sure Overshown goes here first.
Okay. He's going to be 20 for us. I don't know who's next, right? It could be Colson. It could be Peyton Wilson. Could be somebody else. You said Marist earlier. Could be him. Do we go with a Marquise Bell? Do we want to talk about Patrick Queen further? Do we want to start talking about Demario Davis and those guys? I think I'm leaning towards going to the older guys at this point, but maybe there is a couple other young guys that we want to get in here first.
No, I think that's them. I can't. Patrick Queen was really only legit with Roquan Smith, and that's not there anymore. So I don't trust him. You can't trust Patrick Queen. So yeah, I would go. I would probably consider here Demario Davis.
Demario Davis is the Hall of Famer I was talking about earlier. Him and Bobby Wagner.
You're going to put him in the Hall of Fame instead of Fred Warner?
Definitely.
Oh my God.
Dude's done it for 10 years and been amazing for 10 years. Best linebacker in the NFL currently at 35 years old.
There's 3 not even 35-year-old linebackers in the league, so it's not saying much.
Best linebacker in the NFL at 35 years old. Meaning he is 35 years old, and also he is the best linebacker
Fred
in the
Warner
NFL.
is the best linebacker in the NFL. The grading might be slightly different, but no.
I don't know about that. All right. Anyway, Demario Davis, 21. I think I would go with CJ Mosley and Bobby Wagner next at 22 and 23.
Yeah, let's get the vets in there. Linebackers is a cerebral position. We need these guys in here.
Yep. And then it's really, I think Eric Kendricks, also in Dallas now, is a name to consider. He has been showing some wear and tear the last few years, only graded 72.3. Levante David as well, 72.7 last year. I think maybe it's Davis, Mosley, Wagner, and then we hold off on Kendricks and David.
Yeah, agreed. And I would hold off on Kendricks because, like you said, the wear and tear, and then also the interior of that defense is still a huge question mark. At least as it comes to supporting the linebackers. Odighizuwa is going to do what he does with splash plays in the pass rush, but as far as kind of keeping the jersey clean of the middle linebacker, that defense is incredibly suspect at the one tag right now, and that's going to impact Kendricks more than it does someone who's a more athletic run and hit linebacker like an Overshown. And that's why I want to hold off on those other 2 older guys.
Okay, for sure. I think this is where I want to go Colson and Wilson before Bell, but those are probably the 3 I go to next, with maybe Marist in there as well.
I'm rolling the dice. I'm taking Wilson. He was the best guy. It's just injury history. He doesn't have an ACL, right, or something like that, but neither did Hines Ward. And look at where Wilson just ended up. So who knows? At this point, linebacker 3, I'm willing to take a shot on the talent.
24. Yep. Okay.
24,
So I'm with you on that. I think he's the next guy. Colson, though, at just 21 years old, I understand that situation's not there yet, but at 21 years old, 3 years younger than Wilson, I think that boosts the patience you can have with him. So I think he would be my 25. And
That's
I think Marist would be above Bell for me, and that would be 26 and 27.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I would mark Bell as the guy that could really, if he has another good year, then it's okay, no matter what, this guy's good. And he's going to be up there.
I'm just not sure who's going to get the most time. Who's going to get the time, right? It's now a crowded room where there's a huge hole. They try to fix it with a bunch of bodies, and that's a great way to attack it. It's not so great for fantasy managers because you really don't know who to invest in.
Exactly.
Okay. We're at 27, now at 28. Quay Walker is somebody that we haven't spoken much about. He's 24 years old on the Packers. He is the starting linebacker for the Packers, but he's just been kind of a mess, right? He has some amazing splash plays. He shows his speed and coverage ability and the ability to really take over games. He also has been thrown out of more games than I think any other linebacker in the NFL in the last 2 years. He makes a lot of boneheaded plays, which I think just affects his grading pretty considerably. He had a 61.2 last year, and that's basically where he's been, which is, again, as average can get. I do think there's more there to unlock. I don't know if he's going to get better with age or if he's somebody that just relies too much on his athletics and not enough on his mental acumen to take it to the next step. So I really struggle with saying he's the guy next. I think you can say it's Trevin Wallace, who the Carolina drafted pretty early this year. Or at that point, do we say, okay, that's where Patrick Queen comes in, since he is, a starting level linebacker in the NFL at least, or at least we hope he will be, right? And then I think it's Blake Cashman. I think this is where Blake Cashman, being still 28 years old with a high graded season, going to Minnesota, you'll at least get that one other really good year. So I don't know.
I still don't trust Patrick Queen. I don't trust him. It's not that he was average. He was bad before Roquan Smith, because he's a blitzer, a playmaker. He kind of plays out of sorts. He doesn't play sound defense, and that's okay when you're in the right situation and you're in a defense that allows you to do that, which is what he had alongside Roquan Smith. I would have to see that in Pittsburgh before I say, okay, yeah, I'm still okay with him. It's pretty scary. It's hard to trust him as someone who drafted him and was waiting for that sort of come up, and it eventually came with Roquan Smith. It's hard to trust him. I would probably look at someone like Jamin Davis before going to Patrick Queen. Similar, again, like an athletic type, kind of a run and hit, showed some steady improvement, but more steadily in the run game as a run defender. He was actually at top 25 just grade wise in run defense last year. And so he's not solely reliant on sort of his pass rush athleticism acumen like Patrick Queen was early in his career. Why not Jamin Davis?
He was really bad his rookie year, but what did he do last year?
Last year, I mean, I just had it up, but he took a big leap in the run game in particular. Let me pull back up his grading here. But yeah, run defense grade 76.1, 71.6 in the pass rush. Coverage was actually pretty bad, like outside of the top 60 for all linebackers. But again, that's a variable part of the position. So again, that if his low point in the three sort of aspects of linebacker play was his pass coverage, and I know he's an athlete, he's not a big plotter that is, solely one dimensional going downhill, then I'm going to take that, because he improved sort of the steady aspects of his game in year 3, which you kind of look for. Year 3 breakout. He didn't necessarily break out, but 67.6 grade overall year over year. And so now he gets a defensive minded head coach. He actually had one previously as well, but we saw what Quinn did with some of the athletic linebackers in Dallas with Marquise Bell. Maybe Jamin Davis is his Marquise Bell.
Yeah. Okay. I like Jamin Davis. I loved him as a prospect, just super disappointed by his rookie year and then the pass game last year. So he'll be 28. We have 4 spots left. So I think we need to figure out, I don't feel good about leaving Dre Greenlaw off the list altogether, to be honest, because I think at 27, there's still time for him to make a recovery. I can see him being one of those guys that we're talking about. He's like 33 years old now and he's still playing good football. I could really see that happening with him. So I don't think you're limited to just, 20, 28, 29. So I don't feel good about leaving him off. I don't feel good about leaving Cedric Gray off, who is one of the best coverage linebackers in this draft, goes to Tennessee. I think they're doing a lot to try to improve the situation there. Those would be the 2 guys that I think should be on the list. Quay Walker, I think it's debatable, but I would say maybe he makes the list. And then Levante David, I think, would be my last. I think those would be the 4 guys for me. Curious if there's anyone else for you. I mean, again, Jameen Sherwood on the Jets, we haven't really put him on. 24 years old, graded out at 76 last year. Was a really good football player, but again, I don't know if it's just the situation is so good. Not sure he's a second contract guy, right? So he might be playing elsewhere, and if he is, maybe you don't get the same result. So
yeah,
I am okay leaving him off.
Yeah, I'm not sure his role is big enough for a second contract out there to date. So, I mean, of course, anything can happen this upcoming year, and maybe then he kind of forces their hand, but I don't see that. I don't really see that taking place. So I would keep him off there. I'm not sure I would really stump the table for anybody else. So it might be time for some of those vets and just rookies or very young players that we kind of have some upside with to kind of round out the list. The thing about Quay Walker is, you look back, some of the best linebackers ever just had a little bit of crazy, and he's a little crazy. So maybe we just take a shot on crazy and we put Quay Walker here because, again, we kind of like the trajectory of the Packers as a whole on offense and defense. He takes a bit of a step up. I don't know. I could see it. I like crazy.
You do like crazy. Yeah, I said I think he should make the top 32. We can put him in here 28 or 29. I'm okay with that. Quay Walker at 29. And again, I think it's Greenlaw, I think it's Levante David, and I think it's Cedric Gray for me. Those would be the guys that get my vote for the final three spots. Trevin Wallace, I don't know enough about him in Carolina to say that he would make a list for me. Tommy Eichenberg, I liked him, but he went really late. I don't think the Raiders are super invested in him at this point. Raiders fans out there might be saying Robert Spallone, who I just love saying Spallone. No,
You
Spallone.
just love the pronunciations. Love it. Okay.
Graded out really well last year. Think he just got a little bit of an extension. So might be a guy that people keep an eye on as just like a Mr. Consistent, right? If he's your linebacker 3, could be a guy to make the list. But again, I think for me, I would go with David. I would go with Greenlaw. I would go with Gray.
I would go with those names plus Wallace beforehand. I'm a big fan of Wallace. Here's my thing with Cedric Gray, and it's just that there's no other way to say it other than they were not well coached on defense out there in Carolina or in North Carolina. So I'm uneasy about his transition. It could be that if he was well coached, he probably would have went a lot higher in the draft, and he's got everything it takes, and he could, and once he gets some, better coaching and assimilates himself into a good defense with a defined role, he's great. But I didn't see it. I saw just a mess on defense at UNC for a couple of years now, quite frankly. So I just don't feel comfortable with that. So I maybe put him at the bottom of this list here.
So if we go Wallace at 30, that's 2 spots for 3 names: Gray, Levante David, and Dre Greenlaw.
I'm never gonna put the Achilles guy on the list, so you're gonna have to fight for him here. If you want him on, you're gonna have to put him on.
For Greenlaw,
yeah.
It's
an easy way to write anybody
was off. Yeah, but if anyone was going to do it, wouldn't it be him?
I don't know. I guess
you talk about nuts linebackers. Like, this dude plays like an absolute madman.
Yeah, but it's also a late tear. It was the Super Bowl. He's out this whole year.
He's out the whole year. You do not rely on him this year at all.
Yeah,
for sure.
I know there's some running backs. Oh, they can't. No. He's out. He is out. Does money then start to catch up to San Francisco 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if they have to give a big contract to their quarterback? I don't know. The makeup of the team could look a lot different by the time this injury's really, really behind him. If you want to put him 32nd as kind of like a wild card, I'm fine with that.
I think that's where I would put him.
Put him there.
Because I think it's also like a respect thing. Like, it's like, this is a guy. Okay. This is a guy that like is a dude, right? Like, he's a dude.
Sure.
Put him on the list, man. 32. Levante David, still playing pretty well. Tampa Bay just re-signed him. He's kind of taking these year by year contracts at this point. Could see him sticking around the league for a while, and it's not a 1-year investment. But again, I like Cedric Gray. The Packers took Tyron Hopper in the 3rd round, another linebacker in that group. I don't think they play 3 linebackers all that often. I don't really know what his role can be, but he does have the body type that I typically like in linebackers. And it's like, he went before Cedric Gray did. So I really don't know. I think there's a bunch of names here for 31. But again, I think probably if I had to just put somebody's name down, it'd be Levante David.
Yeah, I think so. Because once you get to this point, you say, okay, I could do the 1-year deal, 2 tops, and I start looking at rookies in next year's rookie draft. And you kind of fill it that way. Because we're talking linebacker 3 at this point. So it's whatever you haven't gotten, which is why when you get to the end of this list, you're either looking at like 1-year windows or rookies and 2nd-year players that are 22, 23 years old that you just think could hit on some upside moving forward. So really it just depends on whatever you've done to this point in your draft. If you've gotten some vets, you got some older steady guys, and now you want to take a Trevin Wallace, then by all means go for it, or Cedric Gray. Or if you went the other way, you went kind of young and you just want something to kind of steady the ship if need be and get you some consistency, then that's what Levante David's for.
Is there any other names that you want to call out before we wrap things up?
Absolutely not. I'm exhausted going through this.
This linebacker group is an absolute bear. It's brutal. It's going to be brutal on draft day for all of you. So we hope this list was helpful. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at all-22.com, and give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, and have a great day.